Please accept my humble obeisances, all courage to Srila Prabhupada. We are in Canto 11, Chapter 25, starting from the beginning of the chapter. And hope to finish Canto 11 today. And then we just have 2 more days left of this Bhadra reading Yajna. So let's offer our prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So, Canto 11, Chapter 25, Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O best among men, please listen as I describe to you how the living entity attains a particular nature by association with individual material modes. 2 to 5. Mind and sense control, tolerance, discrimination, sticking to one's prescribed duty, truthfulness, mercy, careful study of the past and future, satisfaction in any condition, generosity, renunciation of sense gratification, faith in the spiritual master, being embarrassed at improper action, charity, simplicity, humbleness, and satisfaction within oneself are qualities of the mode of goodness. Material desire, great endeavor, audacity, dissatisfaction, even in gain, false pride, praying for material advancement, considering oneself different and better than others, sense gratification, rash eagerness to fight, a fondness for hearing oneself praised, the tendency to ridicule others, advertising one's own prowess, and justifying one's actions by one's strength are qualities of the mode of passion. Intolerant anger, stinginess, speaking without scriptural authority, violent hatred, living as a parasite, hypocrisy, chronic fatigue, quarrel, lamentation, delusion, unhappiness, depression, sleeping too much, false expectations, fear, and laziness constitute the major qualities of the mode of ignorance. Now please hear about the combination of these 3 modes. 6. My dear Uddhava, the combination of all 3 modes is present in the mentality of I and mine. The ordinary transactions of this world, which are carried out through the agency of the mind, the objects of perception, the senses, and the vital airs of the physical body are also based on the combination of the modes. 7. When a person devotes himself to religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification, the faith, wealth, and sensual enjoyment obtained by his endeavors display the interaction of the 3 modes of nature. 8. When a man desires sense gratification, being attached to family life, and when he consequently becomes established in religious and occupational duties, the combination of the modes of nature is manifest. 9. A person exhibiting qualities such as self-control is understood to be predominantly in the mode of goodness. Similarly, a passionate person is recognized by his lust, and one in ignorance is recognized by qualities such as anger. 10. Any person, whether man or woman, who worships me with loving devotion, offering his or her prescribed duties unto me, without material attachment, is understood to be situated in goodness. 11. When a person worships me by his prescribed duties with the hope of gaining material benefit, his nature should be understood to be in passion. And one who worships me with the desire to commit violence against others is in ignorance. 12. The 3 modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, influence the living entity, but not me. Manifesting within his mind, they induce the living entity to become attached to material bodies and other created objects. In this way, the living entity is bound up. 13. When the mode of goodness, which is luminous, pure, and auspicious, predominates over passion and ignorance, a man becomes endowed with happiness, virtue, knowledge, and other good qualities. 14. When the mode of passion, which causes attachment, separatism, and activity, conquers ignorance and goodness, a man begins to work hard to acquire prestige and fortune. Thus, in the mode of passion, he experiences anxiety and struggle. 15. When the mode of ignorance conquers passion and goodness, it covers one's consciousness and makes one foolish and dull. Falling into lamentation and illusion, a person in the mode of ignorance sleeps excessively, indulges in false hopes, and displays violence towards others. 16. When consciousness becomes clear and the senses are detached from matter, one experiences fearlessness within the material body and detachment from the material mind. You should understand the situation to be the predominance of the mode of goodness, in which one has the opportunity to realize me. 17. You should discern the mode of passion by its symptoms, the distortion of the intelligence because of too much activity, the inability of the perceiving senses to disentangle themselves from mundane objects, an unhealthy condition of the working physical organs, and the unsteady perplexity of the mind. When one's higher awareness fails and finally disappears, and one is thus unable to concentrate his attention, his mind is ruined and manifests ignorance and depression. You should understand this situation to be the predominance of the mode of ignorance. 19. With the increase of the mode of goodness, the strength of the demigod similarly increases. When passion increases, the demoniac becomes strong. And with the rise of ignorance, O Uddhava, the strength of the most wicked increases. 20. It should be understood that alert wakefulness comes from the mode of goodness, sleep with dreaming from the mode of passion, and deep, dreamless sleep from the mode of ignorance. The fourth state of consciousness pervades these three and is transcendental. 21. Learned persons dedicated to Vedic culture are elevated by the mode of goodness to higher and higher positions. The mode of ignorance, on the other hand, forces one to fall headfirst into lower and lower births, and by the mode of passion, one continues transmigrating through human bodies. 22. Those who leave this world in the mode of goodness go to the heavenly planets. Those who pass away in the mode of passion remain in the world of human beings, and those dying in the mode of ignorance must go to hell. But those who are free from the influence of all modes of nature come to me. 23. Work performed as an offering to me without consideration of the fruit is considered to be in the mode of goodness. Work performed with a desire to enjoy the results is in the mode of passion, and work impelled by violence and envy is in the mode of ignorance. 24. Absolute knowledge is in the mode of goodness. Knowledge based on duality is in the mode of passion, and foolish materialistic knowledge is in the mode of ignorance. Knowledge based upon me, however, is understood to be transcendental. 25. Residence in the forest is in the mode of goodness. Residence in a town is in the mode of passion. Residence in a gambling house displays the quality of ignorance. And residence in a place where I reside is transcendental. 26. A worker free of attachment is in the mode of goodness. A worker blinded by personal desire is in the mode of passion, and a worker who has completely forgotten how to tell right from wrong is in the mode of ignorance. But a worker who has taken shelter of me is understood to be transcendental to the modes of nature. 27. Faith directed towards spiritual life is in the mode of goodness. Faith rooted in fruitive work is in the mode of passion. Faith residing in irreligious activities in the mode of ignorance, but faith in my devotional service is purely transcendental. 28. Food that is wholesome, pure, and obtained without difficulty is in the mode of goodness. Food that gives immediate pleasure to the senses is in the mode of passion, and food that is unclean and causes distress is in the mode of ignorance. 29. Happiness derived from the self is in the mode of goodness. Happiness based on sense gratification is in the mode of passion, and happiness based on delusion and degradation is in the mode of ignorance. But that happiness found within me is transcendental. 30. Therefore, material substance, place, result of activity, time, knowledge, work, the performer of work, faith, state of consciousness, species of life, and destination after death are all based on the three modes of material nature. 31. O best of human beings, all states of material being are related to the interaction of the enjoying soul and material nature. Whether seen, heard of, or only conceived within the mind, they are without exception constituted of the modes of nature. 32. O gentle Uddhava, all these different phases of conditioned life arise from work born of the modes of material nature. The living entity who conquers these modes, manifested from the mind, can dedicate himself to me by the process of devotional service and thus attain pure love for me. 33. Therefore, having achieved this human form of life, which allows one to develop knowledge, those who are intelligent should free themselves from all contamination of the modes of nature and engage exclusively in loving service to me. 34. A wise sage, free from all material association and unbewildered, should subdue his senses and worship me. He should conquer the mode of passion and ignorance by engaging himself only with things in the mode of goodness. 35. Then, being fixed in devotional service, the sage should also conquer the material mode of goodness by indifference towards the modes. Thus pacified within his mind, the spirit soul, freed from the modes of nature, gives up the very cause of his conditioned life and attains me. 36. Freed from the subtle conditioning of the mind and from the modes of nature born of material consciousness, the living entity becomes completely satisfied by experiencing my transcendental form. He no longer searches for enjoyment in the external energy, nor does he contemplate or remember such enjoyment within himself. Shivandavan looks ready to read chapter 26.
Chapter 26, the Aila Gita. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, having achieved this human form of life, which affords one the opportunity to realize me, and being situated in my devotional service, one can achieve me, the reservoir of all pleasure and the supreme soul of all existence, residing within the heart of every living being. 2. A person fixed in transcendental knowledge is freed from conditioned life by giving up his false identification with the products of the material modes of nature. Seeing these products as simply illusion, he avoids entanglement with the modes of nature, although constantly among them. Because the modes of nature and their products are simply not real, he does not accept them. 3. One should never associate with materialists, those dedicated to gratifying their genitals and bellies. By following them, one falls into the deepest pit of darkness, just like a blind man who follows another blind man. 4. The following song was sung by the famous emperor Pururava. When deprived of his wife Urvashi, he was at first bewildered, but by controlling his lamentation, he began to feel detachment. 5. When she was leaving him, even though he was naked, he ran after her just like a madman and called out in great distress, "Oh, my wife, oh, terrible lady, please stop." 6. Although for many years Pururava had enjoyed sex pleasure in the evening hours, still he was not satisfied by such insignificant enjoyment. His mind was so attracted to Urvashi that he did not notice how the nights were coming and going. 7. King Aila said, "Alas, just see the extent of my delusion. This goddess was embracing me and held my neck in her grip. My heart was so polluted by lust that I had no idea how my life was passing." 8. That lady cheated me so much that I did not even see the rising or setting of the sun. Alas, for so many years I passed my days in vain. 9. Alas, although I'm supposed to be a mighty emperor, the crown jewel of all kings on this earth, just see how my bewilderment has rendered me a toy animal in the hands of women. 10. Although I was a powerful lord with great opulence, that woman gave me up as if I were no more than an insignificant blade of grass. And still, naked and without shame, I followed her, crying out to her like a madman. 11. Where are my so-called great influence, power and sovereignty? Just like an ass being kicked in the face by his she-ass, I ran after that woman who had already given me up. 12. What's the use of a big education or the practice of austerities and renunciation? And what's the use of studying religious scriptures, of living in solitude and silence, if, after all that, one's mind is stolen by a woman? 23. To hell with me, I'm such a fool. I didn't even know what was good for me. Although I arrogantly thought I was highly intelligent. Although I achieved the exalted position of a lord, I allowed myself to be conquered by women as if I were a bullock or jackass. 14. Even after I had served the so-called nectar of the lips of Urvashi for so many years, my lusty desires kept rising again and again within my heart and were never satisfied, just like a fire that can never be extinguished by the oblations of ghee poured into its flames. 15. Who but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lies beyond material perception and is the Lord of self-satisfied sages, can possibly save my consciousness, which has been stolen by a prostitute? 16. Because I allowed my intelligence to become dull, and because I failed to control my senses, the great confusion in my mind did not go away, even though Urvashi herself gave me wise counsel with well-spoken words. 17. How can I blame her for my trouble when I am myself ignorant of my real spiritual nature? I did not control my senses, so I'm like a person who mistakenly sees a harmless rope as a snake. 18. What is this polluted body anyway? So filthy and full of bad odors. I was attracted by the fragrance and beauty of a woman's body. But what are those so-called attractive features? They're simply a false covering created by illusion. 1920. One can never decide whose property the body actually is. Does it belong to one's parents who have given birth to it, to one's wife who gives it pleasure, or to one's employer who orders the body around? Is it the property of the funeral fire or of the dogs and jackals who may ultimately devour it? Is it the property of the indwelling soul who partakes in its happiness and distress? Or does the body belong to intimate friends who encourage and help it? Although a man never definitely ascertains the proprietor of the body, he becomes most attached to it. The material body is a polluted material form heading towards a lowly destination. Yet when a man stares at the face of a woman, he thinks, what a good-looking lady. What a charming nose she has got. And see her beautiful smile. 21. What difference is there between ordinary worms and persons who try to enjoy this material body composed of skin, flesh, blood, muscle, fat, marrow, bone, stool, urine, and pus? 22. Yet even one who theoretically understands the actual nature of the body should never associate with women or with men attached to women. After all, the contact of the senses with their objects inevitably agitates the mind. 23. Because the mind is not disturbed by that which is neither seen nor heard, the mind of a person who restricts the material senses will automatically be checked in its material activities and become pacified. 24. Therefore, one should never let his senses associate freely with women or with men attached to women. Even those who are highly learned cannot trust the 6 enemies of the mind. What to speak then of foolish persons like me? 25. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, having thus chanted this song, Maharaj Pururava, eminent among the demigods and human beings, gave up the position he had achieved in the planet of Urvashi. His illusion cleansed away by transcendental knowledge, he understood me to be the supreme soul within his heart, and so at last achieved peace. 26. An intelligent person should therefore reject all bad association and take up the association of saintly devotees whose words cut off the excessive attachment of one's mind. 27. My devotees fix their minds on me and do not depend on anything material. They are always peaceful, endowed with equal vision, and free from possessiveness, false ego, duality, and greed. 28. O greatly fortunate Uddhava, in the association of such saintly devotees, there is constant discussion of me, and those partaking in this chanting and hearing of my glories are certainly purified of all sins. 29. Whoever hears, chants, and respectfully takes to heart these topics about me becomes faithfully dedicated to me and thus achieves my devotional service. 30. What more remains to be accomplished for the perfect devotee after achieving devotional service unto me, the supreme absolute truth, whose qualities are innumerable and who am the embodiment of all ecstatic experience? 31. Just as cold, fear, and darkness are eradicated for one who has approached the sacrificial fire, So dullness, fear, and ignorance are destroyed for one engaged in serving the devotees of the Lord. 32. The devotees of the Lord, peacefully fixed in absolute knowledge, are the ultimate shelter for those who are repeatedly rising and falling within the fearful ocean of material life. Such devotees are just like a strong boat that comes to rescue persons who are at the point of drowning. 33. Just as food is the life of all creatures, just as I am the ultimate shelter for the distressed, and just as religion is the wealth of those who are passing away from this world, so my devotees are the only refuge of persons fearful of falling into a miserable condition of life. 34. My devotees bestow divine eyes, whereas the sun allows only external sight, and that only when it is risen in the sky. My devotees are one's real worshipable deities and real family. They are one's own self, and ultimately, they are non-different from me. 35. Thus, losing his desire to be on the same planet as Urvashi, Maharaja Pururava began to wander the earth free of all material association and completely satisfied within the self. Thus ends chapter 26 of the 11th canto. Hari Bol.
Thank you. Vaishnavi, would you like to read 27? Okay, she seems busy. Okay, chapter, yes.
I'll do 28.
Oh, okay, Shikshashtaka was going to do 28. Maybe we can swap, but 27 is a little longer chapter. So, Shikshashtaka, are you ready? Okay, I'll read 27 and you can read 28 then. Chapter 27, Lord Krishna's instructions on the process of daily worship. Text 1. Sri Uddhava said, My dear Lord, O Master of the devotees, please explain to me the prescribed method of worshipping you in your deity form. What are the qualifications of those devotees who worship the deity, or what basis is such worship established, and what is the specific method of worship too? All the great sages repeatedly declare that such worship brings the greatest benefit possible in human life. This is the opinion of Narad Muni, the great Vyasadeva, and my own spiritual master Brihaspati. 3.4. O most magnanimous Lord, the instructions on this process of deity worship first emanated from your lotus mouth. Then they were spoken by the great Lord Brahma to his sons, headed by Bhrigu, and by Lord Shiva to his wife Parvati. This process is accepted by and appropriate for all the occupational and spiritual orders of society. Therefore, I consider worship of you in your deity form to be the most beneficial of all spiritual practices, even for women and Shudras. 5. O Lotus-eyed One, O Supreme Lord of all Lords of the universe, please explain to your devoted servant this means of liberation from the bondage of work. 6. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, there's no end to the innumerable Vedic prescriptions for executing deity worship. So I shall explain this topic to you briefly, one step at a time. 7. One should carefully worship me by selecting one of the three methods by which I receive sacrifice, Vedic, Tantric, or mixed. 8. Now please listen faithfully as I explain exactly how a person who has achieved twice-born status through the relevant Vedic prescription should worship me with devotion. 9. A twice-born person should worship me, his worshipable Lord, without duplicity, offering appropriate paraphernalia in loving devotion to my deity form, or to a form of me appearing upon the ground, in fire, in the sun, in water, or within the worshipper's own heart. 10. One should first purify his body by cleansing his teeth and bathing. Then one should perform a second cleansing by smearing the body with earth and chanting both Vedic and Tantric mantras. 11. Fixing the mind on me. One should worship me by his various prescribed duties, such as chanting the Gayatri mantra at the three junctures of the day. Such performances are enjoined by the Vedas and purify the worshipper of reactions to fruitive activities. 12. The deity form of the Lord is said to appear in 8 varieties: stone, wood, metal, earth, paint, sand, the mind, or jewels. 13. The deity form of the Lord, who is the shelter of all living entities, can be established in 2 ways, temporarily or permanently. But a permanent deity, having been called, can never be sent away, my dear Uddhava. 14. The deity that is temporarily established can optionally be called forth and sent away, but these 2 rituals should always be performed when the deity is traced upon the ground. Bathing should be done with water except if the deity is made of clay, paint, or wood, in which cases a thorough cleansing without water is enjoined. 15. One should worship me in my deity forms by offering the most excellent paraphernalia, but a devotee completely freed from material desire may worship me with whatever he is able to obtain, and may even worship me within his heart with mental paraphernalia. 1617. In worshipping the temple deity, my dear Uddhava, bathing and decoration are the most pleasing offerings. For the deity traced on sacred ground, the process of tattva vinyasa is most dear. Oblations of sesame and barley soaked in ghee are the preferred offering to the sacrificial fire, whereas worship consisting of upasthana and arghya is preferred for the sun. One should worship me in the form of water by offering water itself. Actually, whatever is offered to me with faith by my devotee, even if only a little water, is most dear to me. 18. Even very opulent presentations do not satisfy me if they're offered by non-devotees, but I am pleased by any insignificant offering made by my loving devotees, and I'm certainly most pleased when nice presentations of fragrant oil, incense, flowers, and palatable foods are offered with love. 19. After cleansing himself and collecting all the paraphernalia, the worshipper should arrange his own seat with blades of kusha grass whose tips point eastward. He should then sit facing either east or north, or else, if the deity is fixed in one place, he should sit directly facing the deity. 20. The devotee should sanctify the various parts of his body by touching them and chanting mantras. He should do the same for my deity form, and then with his hands he should clean the deity of all flowers and the remnants of previous offerings. He should properly prepare the sacred pot and the vessel containing water for sprinkling. 21. Then with the water of that prokshaniya vessel, he should sprinkle the area where the deity is being worshipped, the offerings that are going to be presented, and his own body. Next, he should decorate with various auspicious substances 3 vessels filled with water. 22. The worshipper should then purify those 3 vessels. He should sanctify the vessel holding water for washing the Lord's feet by chanting Hridayaya Namaha, the vessel containing water for arghya by chanting Shirase Swaha, and the vessel containing water for washing the Lord's mouth by chanting Shikhayai Vasat. Also, the Gayatri mantra should be chanted for all 3 vessels. 23. The worshipper should meditate upon my subtle form, which is situated within the worshipper's own body, now purified by air and fire, as the source of all living entities. This form of the Lord is experienced by self-realized sages in the last part of the vibration of the sacred syllable Om. 24. The devotee conceives of the Supersoul whose presence surcharges the devotee's body in the form corresponding to his realization. Thus, the devotee worships the Lord to his full capacity and becomes fully absorbed in him. By touching the various limbs of the deity and chanting appropriate mantras, the devotee should invite the Supersoul to join the deity's form, and then the devotee should worship me. 25-26. The worshipper should first imagine my seat as decorated with the personified deities of religion, knowledge, renunciation, and opulence, and with my 9 spiritual energies. He should think of the Lord's sitting place as an 8-petal lotus, effulgent on account of the saffron filaments within its whorl. Then, following the regulations of both the Vedas and the Tantras, he should offer me water for washing the feet, water for washing the mouth, arghya, and other items of worship. By this process, he achieves both material enjoyment and liberation. 27. One should worship in order the Lord's Sudarshan disc, his Panchajanya conch shell, his club, sword, bow, arrows, and plow, his Mushala weapon, his Kaustuba gem, his flower garland, and the Srivatsa curl of hair on his chest. 28. One should worship the Lord's associates, Nanda and Sananda, Garuda, Prachanda and Chanda, Mahabala and Bala, and Kumuda and Kumudekshana. 29. With offerings such as Prokshana, one should worship Durga, Vinayaka, Vyasa, Vishwaksena, the spiritual masters, and the various demigods. All these personalities should be in their proper places facing the deity of the Lord. 30:31. The worshipper should bathe the deity every day as opulently as his assets permit, using water scented with sandalwood, ushira root, camphor, kumkum, and aguru. He should also chant various Vedic hymns such as the Anuvaka known as Swarna Karma, Mahapurusha Vidya, the Purusha Shukta, and various songs of the Samaveda such as the Rajana and the Rohingya. 32. My devotee should then lovingly decorate me with clothing, a Brahmana thread, various ornaments, marks of tilak and garlands, and he should anoint my body with fragrant oils, all in the prescribed manner. 33. The worshipper should faithfully present me with water for washing my feet and mouth, fragrant oils, flowers, and unbroken grains, along with incense, lamps, and other offerings. 34. Within his means, the devotee should arrange to offer me sugar candy, sweet rice, ghee, shakshuli, rice flour cakes, apupa, various sweet cakes, modaka, steamed rice flour dumplings filled with sweet coconut and sugar, samyava, wheat cakes made with ghee and milk and covered with sugar and spices, yogurt, vegetable soups, and other palatable foods. 35. On special occasions and daily if possible, the deity should be massaged with ointment, shown a mirror, offered a eucalyptus stick for brushing his teeth, bathed with the 5 kinds of nectar, offered all kinds of opulent foods, and entertained with singing and dancing. 36. In an arena constructed according to scriptural injunctions, the devotee should perform a fire sacrifice, utilizing the sacred belt, the sacrificial pit, and the altar mound. When igniting the sacrificial fire, the devotee should bring it to a blaze with wood piled up by his own hands. 37. After spreading kusha grass on the ground and sprinkling it with water, one should perform the anvadhana ritual according to the prescribed rules. Then one should arrange the items to be offered as oblations and should sanctify them with water from the sparkling vessel. The worshipper should next meditate upon me within the fire. 38 to 41. The intelligent devotee should meditate upon that form of the Lord whose color is like molten gold, whose 4 arms are resplendent with the conch shell, disc, club, and lotus flower, and who's always peaceful and dressed in a garment colored like the filaments within a lotus flower. His helmet, bracelets, belt, and fine arm ornaments shine brilliantly. The symbol of Srivatsa is on his chest, along with the glowing Kaustubha gem and a garland of forest flowers. The devotee should then worship that Lord by taking pieces of firewood soaked in the sacrificial ghee and throwing them into the fire. He should perform the ritual of aghara, presenting into the fire the various items of oblation drenched in ghee. He should then offer to 16 demigods, beginning with Yamaraj, the oblation called Swishti Krit, reciting the basic mantras of each deity and the 16-line Purusha Shukta hymn. Pouring 1 oblation after each line of the Purusha Shukta, he should utter the particular mantra naming each deity. 42. Having thus worshipped the Lord in the sacrificial fire, the devotee should offer his obeisances to the Lord's personal associates by bowing down and should then present offerings to them. He should then chant quietly the Mula mantra of the deity of the Lord, remembering the absolute truth as the Supreme Personality Narayan. 43. Once again, he should offer the deity water for washing his mouth, and he should give the remnants of the Lord's food to Vishwaksena. Then he should present the deity with fragrant perfume for the mouth and prepared betel nut. 44. Singing along with others, chanting loudly and dancing, acting out my transcendental pastimes, and hearing and telling stories about me, the devotee should for some time absorb himself in such festivity. 45. The devotee should offer homage to the Lord with all kinds of hymns and prayers, both from the Puranas and from other ancient scriptures and also from ordinary traditions, praying, O Lord, please be merciful to me. He should fall down flat like a rod to offer his obeisances. 46. Placing his head at the feet of the deity, he should then stand with folded hands before the Lord and pray, "O my Lord, please protect me, who am surrendered unto you. I am most fearful of this ocean of material existence, standing as I am in the mouth of death." 47. Praying in this way, the devotee should respectfully place upon his head the remnants I offer to him. And if the particular deity is meant to be sent away at the end of worship, then this should be performed. The devotee once again placing the light of the deity's presence inside the light of the lotus within his own heart. 48. Whenever one develops faith in me in my form as the deity or in other bona fide manifestations, one should worship me in that form. I certainly exist both within all created beings and also separately in my original form, since I am the supreme soul of all. 49. By worshipping me through the various methods prescribed in the Vedas and Tantras, one will gain from me his desired perfection in both this life and the next. 50. The devotee should more fully establish my deity by solidly constructing a temple along with beautiful gardens. These gardens should be set aside to provide flowers for the regular daily worship, special deity processions, and holiday observances. 51. One who offers the deity gifts of land, markets, cities, and villages so that the regular daily worship and special festivals of the deity may go on continually will achieve opulence equal to my own. 52. By installing the deity of the Lord, one becomes king of the entire earth. By building a temple for the Lord, one becomes ruler of the three worlds. By worshipping and serving the deity, one goes to the planet of Lord Brahma. And by performing all three of these activities, one achieves a transcendental form like my own. 53. But one who simply engages in devotional service with no consideration of fruitive results attains me. Thus, whoever worships me according to the process I've described will ultimately attain pure devotional service unto me. 54. Anyone who steals the property of the demigods or the brahmanas, whether originally given to them by himself or someone else, must live as a worm and stool for 100 million years. 55. Not only the performer of the theft, but also anyone who assists him, instigates the crime, or simply approves of it must also share the reaction in the next life. According to their degree of participation, they each must suffer a proportionate consequence. Sure. Shikshashtaka, go ahead.
Jnana Yoga, chapter 28. Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one should neither praise nor criticize the conditioned nature and activities of other persons. Rather, one should see this world as simply the combination of material nature and the enjoying souls, all based on the one absolute truth. Text 2. Whoever indulges in praising or criticizing the qualities or behavior of others will quickly become deviated from his own best interest by his entanglement in illusionary dualities. Text 3. Just as embodied spirit soul loses external consciousness when his senses are overcome by the illusion of dreaming or the death-like state of deep sleep, so a person experiencing material duality must encounter illusion and death. Text 4. That which is expressed by material worlds or meditated upon by the material mind is not ultimate truth. What, therefore, is actually good or bad within this insubstantial world or duality, and how can the extent of such good and bad be measured? Text 5. Although shadows, echoes, and mirages are only illusionary reflections of real things, such reflections do cause semblance of meaningful or comprehensible perception. In the same way, although the identification of the conditioned soul with the material body, mind, and ego is illusionary, this identification generates fear within him even up to the moment of death. Text 6 to 7. The super soul alone is the ultimate controller and creator of this world, and thus he alone is also the created, similarly the soul of all existence, himself both maintains and is maintained, withdraw and is withdrawn. No other entity can be properly ascertained as separate from him. The super soul, who nonetheless is distinct from everything and everyone else. The appearance of the threefold material nature, which is perceived within him, has no actual basis. Rather, you should understand that this material nature, composed of the three modes, is simply the product of his illusionary potency. Text 8. One who has properly understood the process of becoming firmly fixed in theoretically and realized knowledge, as described herein by me, does not indulge in material criticism or praise like the sun. He wanders freely throughout this world. Text 9. By direct perception, logical deduction, scriptural testimony, and personal realization, one should know that this world has a beginning and an end, and so is not the ultimate reality. Thus, one should live in this world without attachment. Text 10. Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord, it is not possible for this material existence to be the experience of either the soul, who is the seed, or of the body, which is the seen object. On the one hand, the spirit soul is innately endowed with the perfect knowledge, and on the other hand, the material body is not a conscious, living entity. To whom then does this experience of material existence pertain?" Text 11. The spirit soul is inexhaustible, transcendental, pure, self-luminous, and never covered by anything material. It is like fire, but the non-living material body, like firewood, is dull and unaware. So in this world, who is it that actually undergoes that experience of material life? Text 12. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, as long as the foolish spirit soul remains attracted to the material body, senses, and vital force, his material existence continues to flourish, although it is ultimately meaningless. Text 13. Actually, the living entity is transcendental to material existence, but because of this mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease. And just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. Text 14. Although while dreaming a person experiences in many undesirable things, upon awakening, he is no longer confused by the dream experiences. Text 15. Lamentation, elation, fear, anger, greed, confusion, and hankering, as well as the birth and death, are experiences of the false ego and not of the pure soul. Text 16. The living entity who falsely identifies with his body, senses, life, air, and mind, and who dwells within these coverings assumes the forms of his own materially conditioned qualities and work. He is designated variously in relation to the total material energy, and thus, under the strict control of supreme time, he is forced to run here and there within material existence. Text 17. Although the false ego has no factual basis, it is perceived in many forms as the function of the mind, speech, life, air, and bodily faculties. But with the sword of transcendental knowledge, sharpened by worship of a bona fide spiritual master, a sober sage will cut off this false identification and live in this world free from all material attachment. Text 18. Real spiritual knowledge is based on the discrimination of spirit from matter, and it is cultivated by scriptural evidence, austerity, direct perception, reception of the Puranas, historical narrations, and logical inference. The absolute truth, which alone was present before the creation of the universe, and which alone will remain after its destruction, is also the time factor and the ultimate cause. Even in the middle stage of this creation existence, the absolute truth alone is the actual reality. Text 19. Gold alone is present before its manufacture into gold products. The gold alone remains after the product's destruction. And the gold alone is essentially reality while it is being utilized under various designations. Similarly, I alone exist before the creation of this universe, after its destruction and during its maintenance. Text 20. The material mind manifests in three phases of consciousness: awakefulness, sleep, and deep sleep, which are products of the three modes of nature. The mind further appears in three different roles: the perceiver, the perceived, and the regulator of perception. Thus, the mind is manifested variously throughout these threefold designation. But it is the fourth factor, existing separately from all this, that alone constitutes the absolute truth. Text 21. That which did not exist in the past and will not exist in the future also no exist of its own for the period of its duration, but is only a superficial designation. In my opinion, whatever is created and revealed by something else is ultimately only that other thing. Text 22. Although thus not existing in reality, this manifestation of transformation created from the mode of passion appears real because the self-manifested, self-luminous, absolute truth exhibits himself in the forms of the material variety of the senses, the sense objects, the mind, and the elements of physical nature. Text 23. Thus, clearly understanding by discriminating logic the unique position of the absolute truth, one should expertly refute one's misidentification with matter and cut to pieces all doubts about the identity of the self, becoming satisfied in the soul's natural ecstasy. One should desist from all the lusty engagements of the material senses. Text 24. The material body made of earth is not the true self, nor are the senses. Their presiding demigods are the air of life, nor is the external air, water, or fire, or one's mind. All these are simply matter. Similarly, neither one's intelligence, material consciousness, nor ego, nor the elements of ether or earth, nor the objects of sense perception, nor even the primeval state of material equilibrium can be considered the actual identity of the soul. Text 25. For one who has properly realized my personal identity as a supreme Godhead, what credit is there if his senses, mere products of the material modes, are perfectly concentrated in meditation? And on the other hand, what blame is incurred if his senses happen to become agitated? Indeed, what does it mean to the sun if the clouds come and go? Text 26. The sky may display the various qualities of the air, fire, water, and earth that pass through it, as well as such qualities as heat and cold, which continually come and go with the seasons. Yet the sky is never entangled with any of these qualities. Similarly, the Supreme Absolute Truth is never entangled with the contamination of goodness, passion, and ignorance, which cause the material transformation of the false ego. Text 27. Nevertheless, until by firmly practicing devotional service to me, one has completely eliminated from his mind all contamination of material passion, one must very carefully avoid associating with the material modes which are produced by my illusionary energy. Text 28. Just as an improperly treated disease recurs and gives repeated distress to the patient, The mind that is not completely purified of its perverted tendencies will remain attached to material things and repeatedly torment the imperfect yogi. Text 29. Sometimes the progress of imperfect transcendentalist is checked by the attachment of family members, disciples, or others who are sent by envious demigods for that purpose. But on the strength of their accumulated advancement, such imperfect transcendentalists will resume their practice of yoga in the next life. They will never again be trapped in the network of fruitive work. Text 30. An ordinary living entity performs material work and is transformed by the reaction to such work. Thus, he is driven by various desires to continue working fruitively up to the very moment of his death. A wise person, however, having experienced his own constitutional bliss, gives up all material desires and does not engage in fruitive work. Text 31. The wise man whose consciousness is fixed in the self does not even notice his own bodily activities while standing, sitting, walking, lying down, urinating, eating, or performing other bodily functions. He understands that the body is acting according to its own nature. Text 32. Although a self-realized soul may sometimes see an impure object or activity, he does not accept it as real. By logically understanding impure sense objects to be based on illusionary material duality, the intelligent person seems them to be contrary to and distinct from reality. In the same way that a man awakening from sleep views his fading dreams. Text 33. Material nations, which expands into many varieties of the activities of the modes of nature, is wrongly accepted by the conditioned soul to be identical with the self. But through the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, my dear Uddhava, this same nations fades away at the time of liberation. The eternal self, on the other hand, is never assumed and never abandoned. Text 34. When the sun rises, it destroys the darkness covering men's eyes, but it does not create the object they then see before them, which in fact were existing all along. Similarly, potent and factual realization of me will destroy the darkness covering a person through consciousness. Text 35. The Supreme Lord is self-luminous, unborn, and immeasurable. He is pure transcendental consciousness and perceives everything. One without a second, he is realized only after ordinary word cease. By him, the power of speech and the life airs are set into motion. Text 36. Whatever apparent duality is perceived in the self is simply confusion of the mind. Indeed, such supposed duality has no basis to rest upon apart from one's own soul. Text 37. The duality of the five material elements is perceived only in terms of names and forms. Those who say this duality is real are pseudo scholars, vainly proposing fanciful theories without basis in fact. Text 38. The physical body of enduring yogi who is not yet mature in his practice may sometimes be overcome by various disturbances. Therefore, the following process is recommended. Text 39. Some of these obstructions may be counteracted by yogi meditation or by sitting posture, practiced together with concentration on controlled breathing, and other may be countered by special austerities, mantras, or medicinal herbs. Text 40. These inauspicious disturbances can be gradually removed by constant remembrance of me, by congregational hearing and chanting of my holy names, or by following in the footsteps of the great masters of yoga. Text 41. By various methods, some yogis free Some yogis free the body from disease and old age and keep it perpetually youthful. Thus, they engage in yoga for the purpose of achieving material mystic perfection. Text 42. This mystical bodily perfection is not valued very highly by those expert in transcendental knowledge. Indeed, they consider endeavor for such perfection useless. Since the soul, like a tree, is permanent, but the body, like a tree's fruits, is subject to destruction. Text 43. Although the physical body may be improved by various processes of yoga, an intelligent person who has dedicated his life to me does not place his faith in the prospect of perfecting his physical body through yoga. And in fact, he gives up such procedures. Text 44. The yogi who has taken shelter of me remains free from hankering because he experiences the happiness of the soul within. Thus, while executing this process of yoga, he is never defeated by obstacles. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shikshastika. Gopal, ready? Please start.
Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Lord Achyuta, I fear that the method of yoga described by you is very difficult for one who cannot control his mind. Therefore, please explain to me in simple terms how someone can more easily execute it." Text 2. O lotus-eyed Lord, generally those yogis who try to study the mind experience frustration because of their inability to perfect the state of trance. Thus, they weary in their attempt to bring the mind under control. Text 3. O lotus-eyed Lord of the universe, swan-like men happily take shelter of your lotus feet, the source of all transcendental ecstasy. But those who take pride in their accomplishments in yoga and karma fail to take shelter of you and are defeated by your illusory energy. Text 4. My dear infallible Lord, it is not very astonishing that you intimately approach your servants who have taken exclusive shelter of you. After all, during your appearance as Lord Ramachandra, even while great demigods like Brahma were vying to place the effulgent tips of their helmets upon the cushion where your lotus feet rested, you displayed special affection for monkeys such as Hanuman because they had taken exclusive shelter of you. Text 5. Who then could dare reject you, the very soul, the most dear object of worship, and the supreme Lord of all, you who give all possible perfections to the devotees who take shelter of you? Who could be so ungrateful, knowing the benefits you bestow? Who could reject you and accept something for the sake of material enjoyment, which simply leads to forgetfulness of you? And what lack is there for us who engage in the service of the dust of your lotus feet? O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma, for you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. Shukadeva Goswami said, thus questioned by the most affectionate Uddhava, Lord Krishna, the supreme controller of all controllers, who takes the entire universe as his plaything, assumes the three forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and began to reply lovingly, displaying his all-attractive smile. Text 8. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, yes, I shall describe to you the principles of devotion to me, by executing which a mortal human being will conquer unconquerable death. Text 9. Always remembering me, one should perform all his duties for me, without being impetuous. With mind and intelligence offered to me, one should fix his mind in attraction to my devotional service. Text 10. One should take shelter of holy places where my saintly devotees reside, and one should be guided by the exemplary activities of my devotees, who appear among the demigods, demons, and human beings. Text 11. Either alone or in public gatherings, with singing, dancing, and other exhibitions of royal opulence, one should arrange to celebrate these holy days, ceremonies, and festivals set aside specially for my worship. Text 12. With the pure heart, one should see me, the supreme soul within all beings, and also within oneself, to be both unblemished by anything material and also present everywhere, both externally and internally, just like the omnipresent sky. Text 13-14. O brilliant Uddhava, one who thus views all living entities with the idea that I am present within each of them, and who, by taking shelter of this divine knowledge, offers due respect to everyone, is considered actually wise. Such a man sees equally the Brahmana and the outcast, the thief and the charitable promoter of the Brahmanical culture, the sun and the tiny sparks of fire, the gentle and the cruel. Text 15. For him who constantly meditates upon my presence within all persons, the bad tendencies of rivalry, envy, and abusiveness, along with false ego, are very quickly destroyed. Text 16. Disregarding the ridicule of one's companions, one should give up the bodily conception and its accompanying embarrassment. One should offer obeisances before all, even the dogs, outcasts, cows, and asses, falling flat upon the ground like a rod. Until one has fully developed the ability to see me within all living beings, one must continue to worship me by this process with the activities of his speech, mind, and body. Text 18. By such transcendental knowledge of the all-pervading personality of Godhead, one is able to see the absolute truth everywhere. Freed thus from all doubts, one gives up fruitive activities. Text 19. Indeed, I consider this process, using one's mind, words, and body functions for realizing me within all living beings, to be the best possible method of spiritual enlightenment. Text 20. My dear Uddhava, because I have personally established it, this process of devotional service unto me is transcendental and free from any material motivation. Certainly, a devotee never suffers even the slightest loss by adopting this process. Text 21. O Uddhava, greatest of saints, in a dangerous situation, an ordinary person cries, becomes fearful, and laments. Although such useless emotions do not change the situation, but activities offered to me without personal motivation, even if they are externally useless, amount to the actual process of religion. Text 22. This process is the supreme intelligence of the intelligence, and the cleverness of the most clever, for by following it, one can in this very life make use of the temporary and unreal to achieve me, the eternal reality. Text 23. Thus I have related to you, both in brief and in detail, a complete survey of the science of the absolute truth. Even for the demigods, this science is very difficult to comprehend. Text 24. I have repeatedly spoken this knowledge to you with clear reasoning. Anyone who properly understands it will become free from all doubts and attain liberation. Text 25. Anyone who fixes his attention on those clear answers to your questions will attain to this eternal, confidential goal of the Vedas, the supreme absolute truth. Text 26. One who liberally disseminates this knowledge among my devotees is the bestower of the absolute truth, and to him I give my very own self. He who loudly recites the supreme knowledge, which is the most lucid and putrefying, becomes purified day by day, for he reveals me to others with the lamp of transcendental knowledge. Anyone who regularly listens to this knowledge with faith and attention, all the while engaging in my pure devotional service, will never become bound by the reactions of the hard work. Text 29. My dear friend Uddhava, have you now completely understood this transcendental knowledge? Are the confusion and lamentation that arose in your mind now dispelled? Text 30. You should not share this instruction with anyone who is hypocritical, atheistic, or dishonest with anyone, who will not listen faithfully, who is not a devotee, or who is simply not humble. Text 31. This knowledge should be taught to one who is free from bad qualities, who is dedicated to the welfare of the Brahmanas, who is kindly disposed, saintly, and pure. And if common workers and women are found to have devotion for the Supreme Lord, they also need to be accepted as qualified hearers. When an inquisitive person comes to understand this knowledge, he has nothing further to know. After all, one who has drunk the most palatable nectar cannot remain thirsty. Text 33. Through analytic knowledge, ritualistic work, mystic yoga, mundane business, and political rule, people seek to advance in religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But because you are my devotee, whatever men can accomplish in these multifarious ways, you will very easily find within me. Text 34. A person who gives up all fruitive activities and offers himself entirely unto me, eagerly desiring to render service unto me, achieves liberation from birth and death, and is promoted to the status of sharing my own opulences. Text 35. Shukadeva Goswami said, Hearing these words spoken by Lord Krishna, and having thus been shown the entire path of yoga, Uddhava folded his hands to offer obeisances, but his throat choked up with love and his eyes overflowed with tears, so he could say nothing. Text 36. Steadying his mind, which had become overwhelmed with love, Uddhava felt extremely grateful to Lord Krishna, the greatest hero of the Yadu dynasty. My dear King Parikshit, Uddhava bowed down to touch the Lord's lotus feet with his head, and then spoke with folded hands. Shri Uddhava said, O unborn primeval Lord, although I had fallen into the great darkness of illusion, my ignorance has now been dispelled by a merciful association. Indeed, how can cold, darkness, and fear exert their power over one who has approached the brilliant sun? In return for my insignificant surrender, you have mercifully bestowed upon me, your servant, the torchlight of the transcendental knowledge. Therefore, what devotee of yours who has any gratitude could ever give up your lotus feet and take shelter of another master? Text 39. The firmly binding rope of my affection for the families of the Dasharas, Vrishnis, Andakas, Sattvatas, and a rope you originally cast over me by your illusory energy for the purpose of developing your creation, is now cut off by the weapon of transcendental knowledge of the self. Text 40. Obeisances unto you, O greatest of yogis. Please instruct me, who am surrendered unto you, how I may have an undeviating attachment to your lotus feet. Text 41 to 44. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, take my order and go to my ashram called Bhadarika. Purify yourself by both touching and also bathing in the holy waters there, which have emanated from my lotus feet. Rid yourself of all sinful reactions with the sight of the sacred Alaknanda river. Dress yourself in bark and eat whatever is naturally available in the forest. Thus you should remain content and free from desire, tolerant of all dualities, good-natured, self-controlled, peaceful, and endowed with transcendental knowledge and realization. With fixed attention, meditate meditate constantly upon these instructions I have imparted to you and assimilate their essence. Fix your words and thoughts upon me, and always endeavor to increase your realization of my transcendental qualities. In this way, you will cross beyond the destination of the three modes of nature and finally come back to me. Text 45. Shukadeva Goswami said, thus addressed by Lord Krishna, whose intelligence destroys all the suffering of material life, Shri Uddhava circumambulated the Lord and then fell down, placing his head upon the Lord's feet. Although Uddhava was freed from the influence of all material dualities, his heart was breaking, and at this time of departure, he drenched the Lord's lotus feet with his tears. Text 46. Greatly fearing separation from him, for whom he felt such indestructible affection, Uddhava was distraught, and he could not give up the Lord's company. Finally, feeling great pain, he bowed down to the Lord again and again, placed the slippers of his master upon his head, and departed. Text 47. Thereupon, placing the Lord deeply within his heart, the great devotee Uddhava went to Bhadarika. Engaging there in austerities, he attained to the Lord's personal abode, which had been described to him by the only friend of the universe, Lord Krishna himself. Text 48. Thus, Lord Krishna, whose lotus feet are served by all great yoga masters, spoke to his devotee this nectarian knowledge, which comprises the entire ocean of spiritual bliss. Anyone within this universe who receives this narration is with great faith is assured of liberation. Text 49. I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original and the greatest of all beings, Lord Shri Krishna. He is the author of the Vedas, and just to destroy his devotees' fear of material existence, like a bee, he has collected this nectarian essence of all knowledge and self-realization. Thus he has awarded to his many devotees this nectar from the ocean of bliss, and by his mercy, they have drunk it.
Thank you, Gopal. Excellent reading. Vaishnavi, if you like, Leeleshwari can read half of the next chapter if you want.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
you can read 25 verses and she can do the other 25. Yeah.
okay. Chapter 30, the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty. Text 1. King Parikshit said, after the great devotee Uddhava left for the forest, what did the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the protector of all living beings, do in the city of Dwaraka? Text 2. After his own dynasty met destruction from the curse of the Brahmanas, how could the best of the Yadus give up his body, the dearmost object of all eyes? Text 3. Once their eyes were fixed upon his transcendental form, women were unable to withdraw them. And once that form had entered the ears of the sages and become fixed in their hearts, it would never depart. What to speak of acquiring fame? The great poets who describe the beauty of Lord's form would have their words invested with transcendentally pleasing attraction. And by seeing that form of Arjuna's chariot, all the warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained the liberation of gaining a spiritual body similar to the Lord's. Text 4. Shukadeva Goswami said, having observed many disturbing signs in the sky, on the earth, and in outer space, Lord Krishna addressed the Yadus assembled in the Sudharma Council Hall as follows. Text 5. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O leaders of the Yadu dynasty, please note all these terrible omens that have appeared in Dwaraka, just like the flags of death. We should not remain here a moment longer. Text 6. The women, children, and old men should leave the city and go to Shankodhara. We shall go to Prabhasa Kshetra, where the river Saraswati flows toward the west. Text 7. There we should bathe for purification, fast, and fix our minds in meditation. We should then worship the demigods by bathing their images, anointing them with sandalwood pulp, and presenting them various offerings. Text 8. After performing the expiatory rituals with the help of greatly fortunate Brahmanas, we will worship those Brahmanas by offering them cows, land, gold, clothing, elephants, horses, chariots, and dwelling places. Text 9. This is indeed the appropriate process for counteracting our imminent adversity, and it is sure to bring about the highest good fortune. Such worship of the demigods, Brahmanas, and cows can earn the highest birth for all living entities. Text 10. Having heard these words from Lord Krishna, the enemy of Madhu, the elders of Yadu dynasty gave their assent, saying, so be it. After crossing over the ocean in boats, they proceeded on chariots to Prabhasa. Text 11. There, with great devotion, the Yadavas performed religious ceremonies according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their personal Lord. They also performed various other auspicious rituals. Text 12. Then, their intelligence covered by providence, they liberally indulged in drinking the sweet Maireya beverage, which can completely intoxicate the mind. Text 13. The heroes of the Yadu dynasty became intoxicated from their extravagant drinking and began to feel arrogant. When they were thus bewildered by the personal potency of Lord Krishna, a terrible quarrel arose among them. Text 14. Infuriated, they seized their bows and arrows, swords, bhalas, clubs, lances, and spears, and attacked one another on the shore of the ocean. Text 15. Riding on elephants and chariots with flags flying, and also on donkeys, camels, bulls, buffaloes, mules, and even human beings, the extremely enraged warriors came together and violently attacked one another with arrows, just as elephants in the forest attack one another with their tusks. Text 16. Their mutual enmity aroused, Pradyumna fought fiercely against Samba, Akrura. Pradyumna fought fiercely against Samba, Akrura fought against Kunti Boja, Aniruddha against Satyaki, Subhadra against Sangramajit, Sumitra against Surata, and two Gadas against each other. Text 17. Others also, such as Nishata, Ulmuka, Sahasrajit, Shatajit, and Bhanu confronted and killed one another, being blinded by intoxication and thus completely bewildered by Lord Mukunda himself. Text 18. Completely abandoning their natural friendship, the members of the various Yadu clans, the Dasharas, Vrishnis, and Andakas, the Bhojas, Satvatas, Madhus, and Arbudas, the Mathuras, Shurasenas, Visarjanas, Kukuras, and Kuntis, all slaughtered one another. Text 19. Thus bewildered, sons fought with fathers, brothers with brothers, nephews with paternal and maternal uncles, grandsons with grandfathers. Friends fought with friends, and well-wishers with their well-wishers. In this way, intimate friends and relatives all killed one another. Text 20. When all their bows had been broken and their arrows and their missiles spent, they seized the tall stalks of cane with their bare hands. Text 21. As soon as they took the cane stalks in their fists, the stalks changed into iron rods as hard as thunderbolts. With their weapons, the warriors began attacking one another again and again. And when Lord Krishna tried to stop them, they attacked him as well. Text 22. In their confused state, O king, they also mistook Lord Balaram for enemy. Weapons in hand, they ran towards him with the intention of killing him. Text 23. O king of Kurus, Krishna and Balaram then became very angry. Picking up the cane stalks, they moved about within a battle and began to kill with these clubs. Text 24. The violent anger of these warriors, who were overcome by Brahmana's curse and bewildered by Lord Krishna's illusory potency, now led to their annihilation, just as the fire that starts in a bamboo grove destroys the entire forest. 25. When all the members of his own dynasty were thus destroyed, Lord Krishna thought to himself that at last the burden of the earth had been removed. Lileshwari.
Text 26. Lord Balaram then sat down on the shore of the ocean and fixed himself in meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Merging himself within himself, he gave up this mortal world. Text 27. Lord Krishna, the son of Devaki, having seen the departure of Lord Rama, sat down silently on the ground under a nearby pipala tree. Text 28 to 32. The Lord was exhibiting his brilliantly effulgent four-armed form, the radiance of which, just like a smokeless fire, dissipated the darkness in all directions. His complexion was the color of a dark blue cloud, and his effulgence the color of molten gold, and his all-auspicious form bore the mark of Srivatsa. A beautiful smile graced his lotus face. Locks of dark blue hair adorned his head. His lotus eyes were very attractive, and his shark-shaped earrings glittered. He wore a pair of silken garments, an ornamental belt, the sacred thread, bracelets, and arm ornaments, along with a helmet, the Kaustuba jewel, necklaces, anklets, and other royal emblems. Encircling his body were flower garlands and his personal weapons in their embodied forms. As he sat, he held his left foot with its lotus red sole upon his right thigh. Text 33. Just then, a hunter named Jara, who had approached the place, mistook the Lord's foot for a deer's face. Thinking he had found his prey, Jara pierced the foot with his arrow, which he had fashioned from the remaining iron fragment of Samba's club. Text 34. Then seeing that four-armed personality, the hunter became terrified of the offense he had committed, and he fell down, placing his head upon the feet of the enemy of the demons. Text 35. Jara said, O Lord Madhusudana, I am a most sinful person. I have committed this act out of ignorance. O purest Lord, O Uttama Shloka, please forgive the sinner. Text 36. O Lord Vishnu, the learned say that for any man, constant remembrance of you will destroy the darkness of ignorance. O Master, I have wronged you. Text 37. Therefore, O Lord of Vaikunta, please kill this sinful hunter of animals immediately, so he may not again commit such offenses against saintly persons. Text 38. Neither Brahma nor his sons, headed by Rudra, nor any of the great sages who are masters of the Vedic mantras can understand the function of your mystic power. Because your illusory potency have covered their sight, they remain ignorant of how your mystic power works. Therefore, what can I, such a low-born person, possibly say? Text 39. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Jara, do not fear. Please get up. What has been done is actually my own desire. With my permission, go now to the abode of the pious, the spiritual world. Text 40. So instructed by the Supreme Lord Krishna, who assumes his transcendental body, by his own will, the hunter circumambulated the Lord 3 times and bowed down to him. Then the hunter departed in an airplane that had appeared just to carry him to the spiritual sky. Text 41. At that time, Daruga was searching for his master Krishna. As he neared the place where the Lord was sitting, he perceived the aroma of tulsi flowers in the breeze and went in its direction. Text 42. Upon seeing Lord Krishna resting at the foot of a banyan tree, surrounded by his shining weapons, Daruga could not control the affection he felt in his heart. His eyes filled with tears as he rushed down from the chariot and fell at the Lord's feet. Text 43, Daruga said, just as on a moonless night, people are merged into darkness and cannot find their way, now that I have lost sight of your lotus feet, my Lord, I have lost my vision and am wandering blindly in darkness. I cannot tell my direction, nor can I find any peace. Text 44, Sukadeva Goswami continued, O foremost of kings, while the chariot driver was still speaking, before his very eyes, the Lord's chariot rose up into the sky, along with its horses and its flag, which was marked with the emblem of Garuda. Text 45. All the divine weapons of Vishnu rose up and followed the chariot. The Lord Janardana then spoke to his chariot driver, who was most astonished to see all this. Text 46. O driver, go to Dwaraka and tell our family members how their loved ones destroyed one another. Also tell them of the disappearance of Lord Sankarshana and of my present condition. Text 47. You and your relatives should not remain in Dwaraka, the capital of the Yadus, because once I have abandoned that city, it will be inundated by the ocean. Text 48. You should all take your own families together with my parents and under Arjuna's protection go to Indraprastha. Text 49. You, Daruka, should be firmly situated in devotion to me, remaining fixed in spiritual knowledge and unattached to material considerations. Understanding these pastimes to be a display of my illusory potency, you should remain peaceful. Text 50. Thus ordered, Daruga circumambulated the Lord and offered obeisances to him again and again. He placed Lord Krishna's lotus feet upon his head and then with a sad heart went back to the city. Thank you.
Karuna Mataji, you ready?
Yes, I am. Chapter 31, the disappearing of Lord Shri Krishna. Text 1. Sukadeva Goswami said, Then Lord Brahma arrived at Prabhasa along with Lord Shiva and his consort, the sages, the Prajapatis, and all the demigods headed by Indra. Text 2 and 3. The forefathers, Siddhas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, and great serpents also came, along with the Charanas, Jaksas, Rakshasas, Kinnaras, Apsaras, and relatives of Garuda, greatly eager to witness the departure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As they were coming, all these personalities variously chanted and glorified the birth and activities of Lord Saudi Krishna. Text 4. O king, crowding the sky with their many airplanes, they showered down flowers with great devotion. Text 5. Seeing before him Brahma, the grandfather of the universe, along with the other demigods who are all his personal and powerful expansions, the Almighty Lord closed his lotus eyes, fixing his mind within himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 6. Without employing the mystic Agneji meditation to burn up his transcendental body, which is the all-attractive resting place of all the worlds and the objects of all contemplation and meditation, Lord Krishna entered in his own abode. Text 7. As soon as Lord Krishna left the earth, truth, religion, faithfulness, glory, and beauty immediately follow him. Kettle drums resound in the heavens and flowers showering from the sky. Text 8. Most of the demigods and other higher beings led by Brahma could not see Lord Krishna as he was entering his own abode, since he did not reveal his movements. But some of them did catch sight of him, and they were extremely amazed. Text 9. Just as an ordinary man cannot ascertain the path of a lightning bolt as it leaves a cloud, the demigods could not trace out the movement of Lord Krishna as he returned to his abode. Text 10. A few of the demigods, however, notably Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, could ascertain how the Lord mystic power was working, and thus they became astonished. All the demigods praised the Lord mystic powers and then returned to their own planets. Text 11. My dear king, you should understand that the Supreme Lord's appearance and disappearance, which resemble those of embodied conditioned souls, are actually a show enacted by his illusory energy, just like the performance of an actor. After creating this universe, he enters into it, plays within it for some time, and at last wins it up. Then the Lord remains situated in his own transcendental glory, having ceased from the functions of cosmic manifestation. Text 12. Lord Krishna brought the son of his guru back from the planet of the Lord of Death in the voice self-same body. And as the ultimate giver of protection, he saved you also when you were burned by the Brahmastra of Avashtama. He conquered in the battle even Lord Shiva, who deals death to the agents of death. And he sent the hunter Jara directly to Vaikuntha in his human body. How could such a personality be unable to protect his own self? Text 13. Although Lord Krishna, being the possessor of infinite powers, is the only cause of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of innumerable living beings, he simply did not desire to keep his body in this world any longer. Thus, he revealed the destination of those fixed in the self and demonstrated that this mortal world is of no intrinsic value. Text 14. Anyone who regularly rises early in the morning and carefully chants with devotion the glories of Lord Shri Krishna's transcendental disappearance and his return to his own abode will certainly achieve the same supreme destination. Text 15. As soon as Dakura reached Dwarka, he threw himself at the feet of Vasudeva and Ugrasena and drenched their feet with his tears, lamenting the loss of Lord Krishna. Text 16 and 17. Dakura delivered the account of the total destruction of the Vrishnis, and upon hearing this, O Parikshit, the people became deeply distraught in their hearts and stunned with sorrow. Feeling the overwhelming pain of separation from Krishna, they struck their own faces while hurrying to the place where their relatives lay dead. Text 18. When Devaki, Rohini, and Vasudeva could not find their sons, Krishna and Rama, they lost consciousness out of the anguish. Text 19. Tormented by separation from the Lord, his parents gave up their lives at the very spot. My dear Parikshit, the wives of the Jadavas then climbed onto the funeral pyres, embracing their dead husbands. Text 20. The wives of Lord Balaram also entered the fire and embraced his body. And Vasudev's wives entered his fire and embraced his body. The daughters-in-laws of Lord Hari entered the funeral fires on their respective husbands, headed by Pradyumna, and Rukmini and the other wives of Lord Krishna, whose heart were completely absorbed in him, entered his fire. Text 21. Arjuna felt great distress over separation from Lord Krishna, his dearmost friend, but he consoled himself by remembering the transcendental words the Lord had sung to him. Text 22. Arjuna then saw to it that the funeral rites were properly carried out for the dead, who had no remaining male family members. He executed the required ceremonies for each of the Jadus one after another. Text 23. As soon as Dwarka was abandoned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ocean flooded it on all sides, O king, sparing only his palace. Text 24. Lord Madhusudana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is eternally present in Dwarka. It is the most auspicious of all auspicious places, and merely remembering it destroys all contamination. Text 25. Arjuna took the survivors of the Jadu dynasty, the women, children, and old men, to Indraprastha. where he installed Bhargya as ruler of the Yadus. Text 26. Hearing from Arjuna of the death of their friend, my dear king, your grandfathers established you as the maintainer of the dynasty and left to prepare for their departure from this world. A person who with faith engages in chanting the glories of these various pastimes and incarnations of Vishnu, the Lord of Lords, will gain liberation from all sins. Text 28. The all-auspicious exploits of all attractive incarnations of Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also the pastime he performed as a child, are described in this Srimad Bhagavatam and in other scriptures. Anyone who clearly chants this description of his pastimes will attain transcendental love and service unto Lord Krishna, who is the goal of all perfect sages. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. We completed 11th canto today, so just the 12 cantos left, which we'll read over the next 2 days. Amazing, amazing journey. Thank you. Very well. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpatarabhyasya Kripasindhavya Chapaditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Anandkoti Vaishnavand ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Good night.
Hare
Good
Krishna.
night.
Good night.